Alright, I'm going to have to make a plug for each end of this to chuck up into my lathe. This is something I had. It was just a leftover something or other, and it's already got a center mark, and it has a shaft that's really close to that. I'm going to have to just buff it off just a teeny bit. Alright, that's good and snug. Now I'm going to turn something that's 5/8 and plug that hole and put this one into the drive. It should fit in there. Now just in case it doesn't, and to put this back in the same place, I got a little mark on my spindle. I'm going to put this mark even with that mark so I can chuck this right back in the same slots. Then we'll see if it fits in my plug here. Nice and tight. Nice and snug. Now that is about like turning one piece of wood. And I've got about a 1/2 inch extra length on my corn cob. Now I'm going to use the old one as a pattern to make the new one. Probably should clean up my lathe once every year or two, whether it needs it or not. I don't want to chuck this back in there the same way it came out. I'm going to give it just a real quick off and on to make sure it's true. It's true enough. Still got a flat side here. It's smooth and it's all round. Set my caliper to this diameter plus about a 32nd. This thing's actually tapered. It's very slightly, but it's got a little taper to it. It's probably not 30/1000ths of an inch tapered. Now I like about another light 1/8 of an inch. I make my own lathe turning tools out of files. Files are good steel, really hard, and I can shape them and grind them however I want to. I'm going to have to grind a little bit on this one. I have a grinder built into my lathe. Right there. That is really close to that groove. I'm gonna have to take this push rod out, which it just connects right inside this plate right here. Pull that screw and disconnect that push rod, because I gotta fit this thing, and I can't do it with this barrel in the way. There you go. Push rod. I drill some holes for the mounting screws. The mounting screws go in the side of this thing. In that big gap, there's a screw on each side. That's the red side. I always mark where screws come out of the holes. Red and blue. Usually red is right. And I mark them so that I can put the same screw back in. I put a red magic marker on the screw and on the where it goes. These old guns, you never know. Somebody might have changed screws. Oftentimes they'll just grab a screw and stick it in there and rethread it. And so you don't want to mix and match on screws thinking that they're all the same. There's a good chance they're not, and there's a good chance that they're probably not. So I always color code my screws. Right, that goes in that hole well enough. Now I've got to counterbore that, and this is backwards going. Counterboring after you've drilled it is very, very dicey, because a lot of times that counterbore will suck into that original hole and it'll just blow the whole thing out. So you got to get creative on your counterbore. Sometimes you got to mill that out by hand with a Dremel. If those two screws are opposite each other, I should be able to sight through them and even punch a drill bit through them. If those two screws, see how they line up? No resistance. And it looks fairly perpendicular to this. Now I'm going to set my push rod in there and see if I can actually view. Alright, the top is here. If I can view those threads when it bottoms out, I'm having to tweak this forearm, this pump handle, by hand. I cut this slot out of here with a handsaw because I didn't know any other way to do it. And I certainly didn't want to hold it in my fingers right to a table saw. You might have noticed I've already had a few acquaintances with a table saw in my finger. And that was the second time I cut my thumb off. It was with a table saw. I'm kind of sneaking up on this thing a little bit at a time because I'm just not sure how big that opening really is. This has been a wild ride. with a little oil on it. Right now it's just metal to metal. I believe it'll work. Taking me a lot longer than what I thought. The original one had some cracks in it. I had a crack on both sides, right in there. Right there's a crack. You can see it. So I had to make this one. And it's the same size, same dimensions, same stripes, except these mounting holes are not blown out so bad. These other ones, the mounting holes were pretty well busted out of them. So, it's been a bear. I believe it'll work. Now I'm going to put some finish on them. And I'm going to antique them.